Today we're talking Eagles. The 2024 season is finally upon us, and I'll be talking about the initial 53-man cutdown. I'm going to hit every position, every player, every coach, everything basically. I'll even be giving my thoughts about fantasy football along the way. Roll the intro. Welcome to Shut Up Football. I'm Jeff Stoltzfus. That's Kevin. Kevin, go Birds. So today's a little bit different of a video. I'm going to kind of treat it like a live stream, which I don't do because I'm too timid. But I wanted to give all the thoughts I possibly could about the Eagles, where they're at for this season. And if you want to learn about the Eagles too, here we go. So let's take a look back, because this year has a lot of question marks about the new coordinators. And we kind of can't talk about the new coordinators without talking about the old coordinators, because last year was something. So going back last year, there were also coaching question marks. They had a new OC in Brian Johnson, who was an internal hire. He was a position coach, a QB coach, who got elevated to offensive coordinator, a former QB himself. And his offense pretty quickly into the season got, I don't want to say discovered, but a lot of people called it vanilla. There was no pre-snap motion. It was pretty barren. And I believe Brett Coleman even called it a high school offense in one of his videos, which is not good. They also had a defensive coordinator, Sean Desai, who had some experience coming from the Bears. I think he was an interim defensive coordinator there. It was not a crazy pick at the time. It was a questionable one. They also saddled him with Matt Patricia. And Matt Patricia was just about the biggest red flag I could possibly think of coming to the Birds. So that didn't turn out well, but I guess we all saw that coming. By the end of the season, they're both gone. I mean, I don't know how many days or hours passed by the end of the year that they just fired them both. And also by the end of the year, Coach Nick Sirianni was on the hot seat, which was fair, I think. So, and the reason was because watching the end of that last season was kind of like watching a car crash in slow motion, and you couldn't stop it. And the thing that hit me was you didn't feel like the answer to fix it was anywhere in the building. And that's not good for Sirianni. You'd like to think at least your head coach can make some changes along the way to help. But even though he was on the hot seat, Jeffrey Lurie apparently still believes in him, so say the reports. So he was not let go. This year he has new offensive coordinators and new offensive or defensive coordinators as well. We got Kellen Moore is the new OC. He was with the Chargers last year, with the Cowboys prior to that. Some questions, some concerned about him. He looks like a ventriloquist dummy. Not trying to be mean, he just does sit on my lap. Last year he was with the Chargers, and that was kind of a train wreck of its own because Brandon Staley got fired. Justin Herbert was hurt at least a decent amount of games. So it's kind of unfair or not accurate to look back at last year and say, well, let's judge him as an offensive coordinator based on that. So let's go back the year before that. He was with the Cowboys. The concern with that was I think they were just okay with him as an offensive coordinator for the Cowboys. And after he left and went to the Chargers, the Cowboys seemed to get a lot better on offense. Mike McCarthy, who spent, supposedly a year in a barn somewhere watching film and getting better before he became the head coach of the Cowboys. So said he. It was a story that I think later on came out that it was a big fat lie. So got to give him props to that. Took a step forward. Their offense was legitimately better after Kellen Moore left. So that's a little concerning. But with the Eagles, at least so far, reports are good. Everyone seems to be on board. Everyone seems to really have a high opinion of Kellen Moore as an offensive coordinator. And the video I've seen of him, he looks very competent. He's good in a room. When he's up there explaining X's and O's, when he's got the video up, when he's talking to the players, I buy it. I completely buy it. He seems to know what he's talking about. He seems like a good coach. So I will remain optimistic going into this season for him. The other thing that would keep me optimistic for him this year is he's bringing pre-snap motion to the Eagles. It's already been talked about a lot this camp. And one of the reasons that's so important is last year the Eagles were in the bottom of the league for pre-snap motion. Like, I don't know if they were dead last, but they were sniffing dead last. So that's concerning because in the modern NFL, you need a little bit of that. You need a little taste of that pre-snap motion to help identify what defenses are doing or confuse them as to what you're doing. It's just the way the NFL works now. And I think a lot of that is why people said they had like a high school offense. It just didn't look modern. It didn't look professional. And it was discovered quickly. So hopefully pre-snap motion this year. Thank you, Kellen Moore, for that. They should be probably, people are estimating, in the top half, if not top third of the league for that, which, if you watch the Dolphins, you watch the Niners, you'll see a lot of that. You'll see how it works to their benefit. Defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, who came over from the Dolphins. I am also optimistic about him as well because, there's no place to go but up is kind of the sad way to put it. But he's got a ton of experience. I have concerns with him as well. Some of the Dolphins apparently last year, the players did not like him. He just wasn't their kind of coach. Maybe it's because he's a bit gruff, more old school. I don't know. But there was conflict there. He was let go from the Dolphins. I think part of the reason he latched on with the Eagles was something to do with family. I think he has family in Pennsylvania or something. So it was attractive to him to come to Philadelphia. So it's kind of hard to tell looking back through the defenses over time as to how good or bad a Vic Fangio defense is, or maybe it's just difficult for me. I am not a smart man. But it didn't look to me like he ever had a top 10 defense. He had some good defenses, but a lot of that stuff is also going to be personnel-based too, and he's been doing it for so long. The personnel is up and down. Depending on what team he was with. You could say he overachieved with lesser personnel at times or not. But usually he's somewhere in the middle is basically the estimation I came to. A Vic Fangio defense is somewhere in the middle. We're going to be able to get by. So he's coached with Jim Mora, Dom Capers, both Harbaughs. Like I said, he's been around forever, so you expect improvement. It's definitely coming to the birds. Concerns about Sirianni still linger, unfortunately. I don't hate him. I don't love him. I'll be as middle of the road on him as I can possibly be. However, I think that he's already on the hot seat for this season. And what I'll say about that specifically is if they don't make the playoffs, I think his job is in jeopardy. And I think that's fair. Now, I understand he just made the Super Bowl a couple years ago, but this is a reactive league. And there's a couple things here at play besides just Sirianni himself. So if the offense does well, the way I see it, but the team doesn't, not only is Sirianni on the hot seat, some people say Bill Belichick is waiting in the wings to coach the Eagles. Do you believe that? I do not believe that. Not only do I not believe that, I don't want that. I don't want Bill Belichick at end of career to come to the Eagles. And I don't really know that he's got a Philly mentality anyway. The Patriots way was one way for a chunk of time. Good for them. They had success. I don't think that's going to work elsewhere, especially not Philly. The other reason is Kellen Moore could get a look. Kellen Moore was one of those guys who, even a couple years ago, was getting talked about as a possible hot head coach hire. It seemed ridiculous to me at the time, based on how young he was and how new to coaching he was. But it was a thing. It was an actual internetable thing you could go look up. So if the offense does really well, but the team does not, and I don't think they're ever going to move on from Sirianni in season. I don't think they're going to be bad enough to do that. But there is the possibility that Kellen Moore will get a look if the team does, or if the offense does well, either inside the building or outside the building. That's what I'm saying. He could be looked at as maybe the next head coach if Sirianni were to go for the Birds, or he's going to get poached somewhere else. Because Jalen Hurts had a down year last year, by all metrics. Well, not by all metrics. Eyeballs. The stats were not horrible. He actually had better passing yards. But if he does better this year, if he observably does better in the overall opinion of everybody, they're going to say Kellen Moore fixed Jalen Hurts. It's just going to be the opinion. They'll be like, look, he did it. He made him better. Now, because we'll get to Jalen in a second specifically, but that's just going to be the opinion. And so people are always looking for a quarterback whisperer. They're always going to be looking for the young hot hire. So Moore could be that guy. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying it's a very real possibility. Let's get to the offseason. So I'll get to the actual positions in a second, but I got to say that I liked most of the draft. I don't know how you guys felt. For the most part, even though they took mostly positions I thought they would, they took them at different points than I thought they would. They obviously took different players than I would have been mocking out. Two of them in particular, and I'll point those out briefly, shortly. I also liked their free agency. They almost got their hand slapped for tampering with Saquon Barkley. Maybe they still will, but it seems for now at least like they're in the clear. I love Saquon Barkley. That's going to be a good one. We skirted the issue. We narrowly avoided getting slapped with some kind of penalty for that, I think, because I think everybody tampers. I just do. The Falcons were really obvious. Kirk Cousins did not help the situation, but I just think it happens all the time, and you just kind of go with it. Trading Hassan Reddick seemed extremely painful at the time. It seemed like, for the most part, bad idea to let him go, to trade him away. Looking back now, I think we all feel a little better about it. Maybe not for our team, but for what evolved out of it. Let's get to the offense. So, Jalen Hurts. Reports came out recently. I think it was an anonymous defensive coordinator said that Hurts can't handle the blitz. They think that they've discovered his kryptonite, his Achilles heel. This is something that Hurts just cannot handle, and if we just blitz him, fine, we got the Eagles by the balls. I don't agree with that at all. I think if you go, it feels like recency bias to me. If you go back last year, yeah, I would agree with that statement. I've watched many an Eagles game where I can look specifically at the play as it's developing, and they're blitzing. Hurts has got people coming right at him. Pause the video, and it's like, okay, Hurts, what are you going to do? And every receiver's back is to him. They're screaming down the field. What is he supposed to do? Because typically, he's either just going to have to launch that thing or he's going to have to run for his life. And I know they say he wasn't really injured, but he didn't seem like he was 100%. So if the knee or whatever was a thing, there was no outlet. There was no halfback to pass the ball to. There was no tight end over the middle. There was nothing. Everyone's back was to him. So I don't know that it's a Jalen Hurts can't handle the blitz problem as much as it is the offensive coordinator screwed him constantly. And I feel like that was already evidenced by getting rid of that offensive coordinator. So I don't buy that. I don't know if you buy that, but I think the new OC is going to have outlets for him, going to have checkdowns. They're going to have all things that make it quarterback friendly that you would expect. It just seems obvious. So, not worried about Hurts. Last year, like I said, statistically, he actually had a better season. He had 3,800 passing yards and 600 rushing yards. So the rushing yards were about on par, more or less, with what he's been having. Maybe slightly down just because his knee was bothering him, I think. But his passing yards were up. So I still think he should be a fantasy stud. There's no concerns. If anything, maybe you should be more optimistic if you have Hurts in fantasy right now for what he's going to do this year. Obviously, he's got a pretty good floor with his rushing ability. I don't know that I expect as many tush pushes this year. And I'll get into that more in a second because I have thoughts on that as well. Players actually voted Hurts as the second most overrated quarterback in the league. That also came out in the last month because I guess this is the time of year where we all just need filler articles to dump on people. I don't know why this even exists or who we decided all collectively to poop on. I forget who number one was. But whatever. That's fine. Overrate him all you want. The dude balled out in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. That's a fact. They didn't win the game, but he played out of his mind Deep ball throws, running, everything. He did everything in that game. Go back and watch that Super Bowl. He was friggin' Superman. So don't tell me he's overrated. He had one bad year. Again, recency bias. So, also, I think most teams in the league would love to have a Hurts. I mean, even if he's not the best, and I'm not saying he's the best quarterback in the league, most people believe that to be Patrick Mahomes. Sure, he's got the titles. I'll follow you down that road. But I think half the teams at least in this league would love to have a Hurts. They just don't. Would you rather have Hurts or Daniel Jones? Would you rather have Hurts or Tua Tagovailoa? I think that's extremely debatable, but I would take Hurts. There are tons of teams. Deshaun Watson. I mean, who are you picking over Hurts? There's a top 10, sure. But then you should be so lucky because Hurts is the guy who's good enough to get you to the playoffs and could win a Super Bowl. Build around him for sure, but man, overrated. Let's move on to Kenny Pickett, who is now the backup quarterback. And this is where things start for me to get really concerning for the team because we got Kenny Pickett from the Steelers. We traded for him. They moved up about 22 spots in the third round, and the Steelers took linebacker Peyton Wilson with it, which I was a big fan of. I got a little bit of injury concerns with him, but I think he is one of the best, if not the best, linebackers that came out this year in the draft. And I think if he can stay healthy, if he's durable, he's going to be a fantastic addition to the Steelers. He feels like a Steeler. So they got a great player. They also picked up 2 7ths from us. So they moved up in the third, got a great player. We gave them 2 7ths. Who cares about 7ths, really? However, so far, it is not a great early return on Kenny Pickett. People are saying that the Steelers fleeced us. And that is probably true. Not so much for the price that we paid, but that Kenny is struggling to be a backup quarterback, which is not what we thought we were getting. Although I don't think that we thought we were going to get a starter. I think the Eagles thought they were buying experience. Someone in the mold again of Gardner Minshew, Marcus Mariota, Nick Foles, because the only other quarterback on the roster at the time was and is Tanner McKee, who is a 6th-round rookie pick with 0 starts. So if you're worried about your backup quarterback having 0 starts, you need someone with experience. And I think that's all the Eagles thought they were buying, really. So hopefully Kenny never sees the field. He probably will for a game or so. But in retrospect, I would have preferred that they went out and gone after Taylor Heineke, Tyler Huntley, although then it would be like a combination of Tyler, Taylor, Tanner. That's just too many T's. But the backup QB situation is extremely concerning for the Eagles in 2024. However, this seems to be the plan. So let's move on to the running backs. Saquon Barkley, never say never. They said that Howie Roseman would never put serious resources into a running back. And I get it because of evidence. He hasn't. Not in a long time anyway. But it's Saquon Barkley. Like this is a different running back, okay? This is more equivalent to the Niners going out and getting Christian McCaffrey, which made a difference for them. Absolutely it did. Barkley's 27 years old, so not at end of life yet. There are injuries. There are concerns about how much usage he's had, but he's 27. He's still a top 5 back. He's a legitimate pass catcher, even down the field. We saw that last year, even with, I think, Tommy DeVito throwing him the ball. He's a good pass catcher. He's a difference maker. I really do think that he's still that good. He's going to take the pressure off Hurts. He's going to open up the offense. And this is not the same as when they picked up DeAndre Swift last year, which at the time I was for because I felt like he was a very good back who never quite got a fair shake. And I thought behind the Eagles' offensive line, which is arguably the best in the league or one of the best in the league, you expected DeAndre Swift to play up above what he had in the past. I didn't see that last year. I liked the player. He had a few games, especially early on, where he popped, and maybe you can blame the offensive coordinator for some of that. I don't know. But what I saw, what I eventually picked up on pattern-wise was if you got a hand on DeAndre Swift, he was going down. That was just the truth. He was not a break tackle kind of guy. And this is the same kind of thing breaking tackles and decision-making that I saw on Hard Knocks when he was with the Lions that Deuce Staley, former Eagle, called him out for in the program. He's like, dude, you make this one move and it's to the house. Why would you make the other move? It just isn't quite there for him mentally, and he doesn't have the, I don't want to say toughness. He's a tough guy. He's a football player, but he doesn't have what Saquon Barkley has. Saquon Barkley's going to get those extra yards. Saquon Barkley's going to get in the end zone, so you don't have to do a tush push. So this is a very different situation. If you're going to spend up, if you're going to go big on a running back, and there's a small handful of guys you could possibly do that with. Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley. Like this is an equal move in my opinion. Probably because of the Barkley situation, hopefully, there are less tush pushes. I'm hoping there's less this year. Yeah, sometimes they're fun, but also sometimes I worry about the health, not just of Jalen Hurts, but about the linemen. I mean, poor Jason Kelce was at the bottom of that pile, stuck under elbows and assholes, just hoping we got in every time. Poor guy. So, and I've also questioned, why don't we just put Saquon in the behind the center and let him direct snap and then push, and have Hurts come up behind him and push him in? Is that legal? Can we do that? Like, they both squat 600 pounds. Like, let's just switch it up. I think that would totally work. So, behind Saquon Barkley, because I don't want to spend forever on him. We all know what he is. Kenneth Gainwell is 25 years old now. He's still the number 2. He's not an RB1. He's never going to be an RB1. He's a good back. I like him, but he's just not a lead back. He's a change of pace guy. Decent for the caliber of player he is, but he's not someone you have to have. I think for the range, the level of player that he is, there are other guys that I would rather have on my team that are on other teams right now. Khalil Herbert is one that comes to mind. I think they're similar in what they could provide, but I like Herbert better. So that's my thoughts on that. Also, let's be fair, this is probably Kenneth Gainwell's last year in Philly. He's at the end of his rookie deal. Unless they can keep him for cheap, and especially now after they paid for Barkley, it has to be cheap. He's not sticking around. If he can get a little bit more change, I think, in his pocket, he's going to go. He's going to go this offseason, absolutely. I don't think that they're going to make a priority to re-sign him unless it's super cheap. I don't know what the market is going to be for him, but I absolutely see him on another team next year. I would stay away from Kenneth Gainwell in all fantasy leagues. I don't know who's going after him, although I did just see him get drafted late. He's got a low floor, low ceiling. He's a roster clogger as far as I'm concerned. I would rather have somebody with more potential for bounce, more upside. Saquon's going to go. If Saquon goes down, Gainwell will get involved. There's no doubt about that, but he's not going to be a one-for-one replacement. He's not a great replacement. He doesn't have enough juice. I saw it last year. He's obviously not Saquon, but he's also maybe not even as fast as he was when he came into the league. I don't know if that's because he bulked up a little or what, but it's just not the same. Last year, I was pounding the table anytime they put Gainwell in instead of DeAndre Swift, and I'm damn sure going to be doing it again this year. If he goes in, I know they'll have to spell Barkley, but when he goes in for Barkley, I'm going to be pounding my coffee table into splinters. Sorry, buddy. They also have Will Shipley, 4th-round rookie they picked up out of Georgia. They took him right in front of Ray Davis and Isaac Guerendo. I liked all 3 of these guys coming out of the draft. I don't think any of them are RB1s. So we'll see in the long run if they make the right choice by taking Will Shipley in front of Ray Davis and Isaac Guerendo. It's way too early to know that. I'm glad they grabbed an RB, that's for sure. I definitely think they needed to grab another running back. I even said it last year, just someone young to have in the wings. So I'm glad they got one. I don't have a problem with who they took. He's seen as a pass catcher, but he very much needs to improve there. I don't think he's quite where he needs to be. I've already seen him listed as not a natural pass catcher, which is not good. He's got some fumbling concerns. I think that was earlier in his college career, so maybe he's past that. Someone, I wish I could find the article now, but someone called him a poor man's Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, so I guess because he's white, that feels tonally unfair. Like skin tone wise. He's not Christian McCaffrey in any way. I actually saw him, I made the connection to Danny Woodhead. He's like a Danny Woodhead, only a little bigger, which I know probably has a lot of you scratching your head right now too. But he's also white, so I guess my fault too. But if he can bear out the pass-catching awesomeness that Danny Woodhead had, Danny Woodhead was good for fantasy and was good for the Patriots for like 2 years. He was decent, so I think he's somewhere in that. If you're going to put it, Christian McCaffrey and Danny Woodhead with Will Shipley, like he's in there. I mean, maybe a lot of guys are in there, but so I expect to see him on the field as a rookie, though, is my point, intermittently. He's just someone who's going to piddle onto the field here and there. Maybe third downs. Maybe he's a good pass-catching third down conversion guy when they want to give Saquon rest or do something funky with him. Saquon will get the bulk of the work, but I expect to see all three guys, Kenneth Gainwell too, on the field this year. That's just how the Eagles roll. It's how they did it last year. I know Saquon is RB1. They're all three going to see the field. And Shipley is probably an okay buy in Dynasty. I haven't targeted him at all, but he's worth a look, depending on how your draft is falling and positionally what you need. You can grab him. The practice squad, they had like 3 other running backs. I think when they cut them, I know Kendall Milton went to the Bengals, so the only one they kept on the Eagles practice squad was Tyrion Davis-Prince. He could also get activated this year, but I don't really care. Wide receivers. A.J. Brown, not much to say. He's worth every penny. Thank God we have him. Don't know what the Titans were thinking. Thank you very much. Devonta Smith, same. He's 1A. I'm glad Howie locked both of those guys up. They're freaking fantastic. That's where almost all the passing is going to go. Jahan Dotson, this is where the drama is for me, in a good and a bad way. No one saw this trade coming. Nobody. Why would you? He's a first-round player sent to a rival. Head-scratching, to say the least. But it's both extremely exciting and existentially terrifying as well. What does it mean? What does it mean that the Commanders would get rid of this level of talent? Is there really this level of talent? Because I don't know how much we've even really seen from Jahan Dotson so far yet in his career. So it's good and bad. Well, not good and bad. It's good and scary. So, first off, he's the best wide receiver 3 the Eagles have had in freaking forever. Like, I can't remember who was our best wide receiver 3 anytime recent. It's been a while. So it's great for the Birds. The concern, obviously, like I said, why did the Commanders do it? Jaden Daniels is a rookie quarterback. He doesn't need him. Seems like it would be a good idea to have more good wide receivers around him to help him. So the unknown is what makes it scary. However, possibilities include maybe they're idiots. Very likely they're the Commanders. The evidence is also there. The other thought I had is maybe they just don't think he's a wide receiver 1, which I don't think he is. Weird they don't think he's a wide receiver 2. That's where I thought he could reasonably be. You'd think it would be Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, and then maybe next year they'd build onto it. So it might be true if he's not a wide receiver 1 and he's not a wide receiver 2 in their eyes. At the time he came out from college, he was comped to people like Tyler Lockett, and that seemed reasonable. Kind of thin-framed, speedy guy, like it all made sense. But if he's not that, you kind of have to ask yourself, what is a first-round wide receiver 3 worth? And that might be why the Commanders did what they did. So what did it cost the Eagles? Let's look at that. The Eagles got Dotson and a 2025 fifth-round pick. Okay? The Commanders got a third-round pick and 2 seventh-round picks. So it's kind of similar Howie dealings as to the Kenny Pickett thing, where he gave up a couple of sevenths, moved some stuff around the middle, except the player we got this time, hopefully, is that much better. So, but if you're concerned, did we get fleeced again? If you believe we got fleeced with Kenny Pickett, did we just get fleeced with Jahan Dotson? I really don't think so. We're not going to know for a while, but cool your jets. Take a look at what we actually have moving forward. I say we, like I'm on the team. I love the Eagles. I thought that was clear. If we look at next year for the Birds, they still have a pick in rounds 1 through 4. 1 through 4, they have someone to draft. And then in the 5th, they have 3 fifth-round picks. Then they're done. No 6th, no 7th. So that's still really good. That's really good for next year's draft. And honestly, do you think they're going to keep all those picks? No, I mean, they'll take those 5ths, they'll move them around, they'll do all kinds of crazy kooky stuff. It's Howie. It's what he does. So, but even if they don't, if they stay where they are, they got the best picks you could get. I mean, they're not missing any early rounds, and they've tripled up before they completely are done for the draft. So they're not crippled. They're fine. Dotson himself is 24 years old. This and next season, he is still on his rookie deal. So that's good for us. They can option him the following year because he was a first-round pick, but they won't because he's going to be a wide receiver 3 here for the Eagles. You don't option wide receiver 3s. So love Dotson for the Eagles as a wide receiver 3, but it is, I think, and maybe I'm alone on this, it is a big hit to his fantasy stock. I've seen other people say it's probably the same, no change. He was, he is. I don't believe that at all. Jahan Dotson maybe didn't have great numbers so far, and maybe he wouldn't have this year, but he got a brand new quarterback in Jayden Daniels. The potential was there, and I felt like he was the wide receiver 2 on that team. So to say that he's going to go to the Eagles and not take a dip in his fantasy stock seems ludicrous to me. I don't understand the case for it. So first of all, let's take a look at wide receiver 3, or whatever you want to call it, for the Eagles traditionally has not produced all that much. I know the last few years I said we didn't have much. Olamide Zaccheaus, Quez Watkins, it hasn't been a good list. But in general, the wide receiver 3 hasn't been productive for the Eagles. Will that change with Kellen Moore? Maybe. Maybe a new OC will change that possibility. But if it's more built on maybe Jalen Hurts' tendencies and how he sees the field, then I don't think it will. So if that's the case, we're likely looking at Dotson as being the 4th in options, as a 4th option in targets for the team. Because it's going to be A.J. Brown, it's going to be Devonta Smith, it's going to be Dallas Goedert, and then probably Dotson. Now, I think he'll be valuable to the team, absolutely. This is great for the Birds. He's going to be good for 3rd and 4th down conversions. He's going to be able to stretch the field, go on some good deep targets. You know, all the stuff that Quez Watkins would have dropped or fumbled away a couple of years ago, Dotson won't. So good for the team, but it's probably also far too late to try and trade him in Dynasty or anything. I wouldn't pick him up in redraft fantasy, but it is what it is. Johnny Wilson is presumably the wide receiver 4 on this team at this point now. That's the way it seems to shake out on the unofficial depth chart, as I see. Johnny Wilson was a 6th-round rookie out of Florida State. He is 6'6", 231 pounds. So he's a big old, tall, drink a glass of water. He's got a lot of weight to him, too. When he came out, I thought he would probably transition to tight end. And I wasn't the only one. I think the NFL draft also put a graphic on the screen and was like, tight end, ? Like, it's just because of his size, because he wasn't just big. We're not just going to go, all right, you're big, tight end town for you. He also had some concerns coming out of college. So some issues with speed, some issues with his hands. Maybe it was concentration. But I think all that has changed. From the draft to now, I have a totally different opinion of Johnny Wilson, and it's because of all the reports I've seen, all the video I've seen, all the talk. So he had a really good camp, He's their wide receiver 4 right now, and he might have been their wide receiver 3 before Jahan Dotson joined, and also I think he's got a concussion right now, but assuming that wouldn't have long-term prohibited him from being the 3. So he's part of the team. He's going to be potentially a good red zone target. He's going to get some stuff here and there. For fantasy, I still think 0. I mean, deep leagues, take a shot maybe. I'm not. But at least for the Eagles, he's a much better pickup than I initially thought that he was going to be. The number 5 wide receiver here is Britton Covey. I don't buy him for a second as a receiver. I know he wants more targets this year. He said he did. We'll talk about him more in special teams, but I don't think he's not a wide receiver to target, to care about. I'm sorry. Ainias Smith, who was a 5th-round rookie. He was a 5th-round pick out of Texas A&M. God, this is an emotional one for me. Get the Xanax ready. So, 5th-round pick, which stunned me. I'm still a little stunned. I was stunned then. I'm stunned now. I was pounding the table for Malik Washington. Love Malik Washington. Eagles pick Ainias Smith. I go, who? Why? Because I don't get it. I didn't get it then. I don't get it now. When I compare the two, it makes even less sense to me because they're the same size, but Malik Washington has better speed, better college production. And there was plenty of talk about Malik Washington prior to the draft. I had him as one of my more beloved wide receivers prior to the draft. So not only was it shocking to see him slide in the draft as far as he did, but the fact that the Eagles willingly picked Ainias Smith over him still just, I question Howie Roseman specifically for his wide receiver evaluations. Not so much with Dotson. I think he's good at identifying existing wide receivers in the NFL and bringing them in, obviously. A.J. Brown to be another one. But unless they literally win or come close to winning the Heisman, like Devonta Smith, I think Howie just doesn't know what he's doing. So it's not good for Smith so far. He had some good tape prior to the draft. I won't act like he didn't, but his numbers were not anywhere close to Malik Washington. I tried to talk myself into him as a possible return man or wide receiver 4, but he had a really bad camp. By all reports, it was just not looking good. It was looking like he was going to get cut. There was a small pop for him at the end of camp, and now he is currently on IR. So he's not even on the 53. He's on IR, which is probably good because I think they would have cut him unless they were going to keep a 6th receiver. And maybe they will. They'll make changes, during the year and before. Practice squad, they snuck Paris Campbell on. They got Paris Campbell early in the offseason. It seemed like he was going to be the wide receiver 3 favorite early, and I guess he just lost that. He was leapfrogged by Johnny Wilson and now Jahan Dotson. They also picked up Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, UDFA out of Georgia, who was originally signed with the Commanders. That's not anything to really care about. It's just kind of an interesting note because he was a name floated around. Let's get to the tight ends. Dallas Goedert, tight end 1. There is no threat behind him. Most seem to rank Goedert as about the 6th best tight end in the league. That's fair, I think, honestly, based on everything we've seen to this point. He's not a young man anymore. He's top 10, but he's not top 2. So he's not someone that I would target in fantasy, really in any league, because personally, and that's just my fantasy football strategy, I either want the best or I want a deep discount. So if I can't get either Travis Kelce or George Kittle or maybe Sam Laporta, I'm just going to wait around forever and find someone with upside. Number 2 tight end for the Eagles is Grant Calcaterra. Still, I'm a little concerned about the tight end room after Goedert. Calcaterra is the tight end 2, but that's traditionally been nothing for the Eagles too. I don't think that's going to change. There is no tight end of value here if Goedert gets injured. This year we saw it for a little while and nobody made any noise. I think we saw it the year before too. There's just make better plans than to have the backup to Dallas Goedert. It's just not the way to go. It is interesting that they only kept 2 tight ends on the active roster, or at least the initial 53-man cut. However, that is going to change. I guarantee it, because on the practice squad, they got Jack Stahl back, who was a UDFA that we picked up years ago. He's back after a brief stint with the Giants. He's never really been more than a blocking tight end, but he's really good at that. They liked him. I think they still like him, and I think they'll put him on the active roster here and there. It's nothing for fantasy, but it's good for the team. They also had a developmental guy, E.J. Jenkins, who was also on the practice squad, UDFA out of Georgia Tech. They liked him a lot as a pass catcher, but it's just developmental. I would not bother putting him anywhere on my team, even in Deep League. Albert Okwuegbunam, or however you say his name, is on the IR. That just still does not seem to be working out. Even when he is healthy. So, sorry, bud. I swear if you become relevant, I will learn how to say your name properly. Offensive line, real quick. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Nakobe Dean, Lane Johnson. Fantastic. That's 3 out of 5 returning starters. That's decent consistency. There are no rookies here. For me, big deal. I know there are great rookies that come out every year that can be offensive linemen, but I just don't want to see it on my team. Let a rook sit. We'll miss Jason Kelce. Cam Jurgens was picked to be the guy, though. It's his time. It's only fair. Here it is. So let's go Chicken Parm. The surprise to the offensive line this offseason was really Nakobe Dean at right guard. Transitioning from tackle to guard, he beat Tyler Steen, second-year man, second-round pick. Tyler Steen is, I think, currently also injured. Nothing serious, I don't think. It was a foot thing. But Nakobe Dean just flat out beat him out even before that injury. He just beat him. So I'm glad we don't have to worry about a second-year injured man being our starter. Makai should be good, hopefully. I mean, the guy is a mountain. I'm hoping that that's going to be good for the Birds. It's a good group. The only thing I'm really concerned about with the line is their depth. I don't really know that many of the names behind them. I think there's Fred, I don't know, Johnson, somebody. There's people back there, but I'm not sure how confident to be about our depth right now. Defense. Let's get to defense, because they did change their defense this year. Now under Vic Fangio, it is a 3-4, and that affects a lot of positions, a lot of people. So defensive line, Milton Williams. He was a third-round pick in 2021. He has been a rotational player up until this point. He was a D tackle when he came out of college, although, and he's now a defensive end because they're in a 3-4. But even at the time he came out of college, he was viewed as not kind of small for a D tackle, kind of a hybrid player, because he was extremely athletic. He wasn't like anorexic. He was just kind of not quite as big, fat, beefy as you would typically see at D tackle. So he is an athletic freak, though. Go check playerprofiler.com. Everything is patinged. So he's an athletic freak, and that's fantastic. In fact, Player Profiler had him listed as first in his class the year he came out. He was compared to Rashawn Gary. I even remember someone at the time comparing him to Aaron Donald. Athletically. I don't think they were talking anything about skill. So there's a lot of athletic upside there for him. He should be able to make a very good transition, I think, to doing more as an end in a 3-4. So he might pop this year. He's a good guy to consider for IDP formats. I think he's one you should absolutely keep an eye on, or if he's available, depending on your league, roster him, even if you don't have to start him. The potential for a pop from Milton is there. There's also another guy right behind him, Moro Ojomo. He's a backup right now behind Milton Williams, but I guarantee he's going to rotate in this year. He's a 7th-round pick from last year. People called him a steal. People were saying he was a 4th-round talent, somehow ended up that went in the 7th round. And I've seen no reports about why that was. It might just be roster construction. Who knows? Might be, people just didn't think they needed that position that late. But he's going to rotate in a good bit, so keep an eye on him for fantasy. Also, the reason to say that is because this is the last year of Milton Williams' rookie deal. After this year, he could be gone. If he doesn't resign, Ojomo will be the in-house favorite to take over for him. So if you see Ojomo rotating in, doing well, but the volume isn't there, and the Eagles don't sign Williams, that's a sneaky play in IDP. I don't really know what to cheer for. Obviously, I want all the guys to do well, so I'm hoping Williams pops and they pay him. I think that he can get paid and stay. That would be nice. Moving on to the actual only listed defensive tackle here, specifically Jalen Carter. He flashed big time as a rookie. I don't know who would disagree with that. He could be the Eagles' Chris Jones. That's the conviction I have in him. I saw it. It's there. He's on a monkey-navigated rocket ship to Mars, and you just get on board with that. He's awesome. Jordan Davis, listed as the nose tackle here because of the defensive scheme. Made sense. He's a gigantic man as well, which was cause for some concern last year due to conditioning. Apparently, he's a little slimmer this year, so he's taking it very serious. I hope that his conditioning is good, and I hope that slimming down is not a problem for that defense. We need him to eat space. Get a spoon. I still have faith in him. I know there's been some concerns about him, but it's still early. And also, we kind of have to have faith in him because who is his backup? I honestly thought I knew the answer to that, and I was wrong. Currently, it's listed right now anyway as Byron Young because it was Marlon Tuipulotu, confidently he said, who had been there for a while, but I think they cut him to make room for Byron Young, who is a former third-round pick who was cut by the Raiders. So Raiders cut this guy. They didn't like their depth. They said, let's go grab him. We can cut Marlon. Marlon could come back. I haven't seen the reports yet, but they're thinking maybe practice squad to get him back is more depth. Linebackers in general, before I go through this year's, I'm going to quick jump back last year because last year the linebacking core seemed to be an afterthought for the Eagles, and I think we paid for it dearly. I mean, think about the names. Zach Cunningham, Nicholas Morrow, Shaq Leonard. It wasn't good. So linebacker as a position may be devalued overall, but if you look at the Super Bowl teams, I mean, look at the linebackers that were in the Super Bowl. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Drew Tranquill, Nick Bolton. I think those teams took the position serious. Even look at the rest of the playoffs. Roquan Smith, Quay Walker, like there's good reason to invest in every level of the defense. Don't get stingy on me now, Howie. So what did they do this year? So currently the inside linebackers for the Eagles, because I want to start inside and work my way out. Devin White. He was the first one in this offseason, fresh off the Bucks. He's a big pickup, former first-round pick. I absolutely love Devin White. I loved him when he came out. He's got tons of range, tons of experience. Last year was a down year. I think the at least thoughts at the beginning of the offseason was questioning how good he was still or what he had. I just think it was a down year for whatever reason. It just was. I'm not concerned about it. I haven't heard anything negative about him all offseason. So far, the only reports I've heard and the only things I've seen are the inside linebackers are Devin White and the end kind of you can debate, but it's Devin White and. So that's the way I'm going with it. Who is the end? The end could be Zack Baun, who was another early sign, and I like, actually. He was a third-round pick from the Saints originally. Good prospect. He underwhelmed. He definitely underwhelmed in New Orleans. I thought he would get more. I thought he would be an IDP asset. He never really was. He had an interception last year. Like, he's just kind of a guy there. And he played more on the outside. So he's going to be moving inside. And that is odd. But playing on the outside seemed more natural for him. But Vic Fangio specifically said, I identify this guy, I want him here with me, and I want him to play on the inside. He's an inside linebacker for me. So whatever led him to that assumption or that choice, I don't know, but Vic was very confident about it, and they executed it. And so far, reports have all been very good. He's had the inside track pretty much all summer to be the other inside linebacker besides Devin White. And he could be a very sneaky pick in IDP formats, because even now, even where it seems like he may have solidified that, still nobody's looking at him. He's available in a lot of leagues. Now, the only thing that is a question mark for Zack Baun, for me, is Nakobe Dean, who is still in the mix. And he may still be rostered in your leagues. But for the Eagles, even though he's been a bit of a disappointment so far, camp reports again for him are high. Sounds like he's been making great improvements. And he's been pushing Zack Baun most recently. So maybe he's another worthwhile stash for Dynasty, for IDP. He's definitely good for the Eagles due to, rotating people and needing depth and all that. I'm thrilled to see so far that we've got White, Baun, Dean, and then Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I don't understand some of the reactions we got this offseason to drafting Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Okay, let's get into this. He's a 5th-round pick out of Clemson, and he's not just a Nepo baby, okay? He didn't get the job because of his name. I don't care what you think. He's not his father. Clearly, he's not as athletic. You can go look up their measurables, their metrics. They're not the same person, but don't sleep on him because I thought, even before I knew what his metrics were, that he was the 3rd, maybe 4th best linebacker in this draft. Based on my eyes. I use my eyes, whatever that's worth. His measurables, like I said, aren't huge, but he reminds me a lot of another Eagle, former Eagle, TJ Edwards. Not athletically amazing, but he knows how to play. Okay, TJ Edwards was a UDFA back in the day who worked his way up to being a starter because he's just a good football player. Now he's with the Bears. I think that's what Trotter could be. I think in deep IDP leagues, he should be rostered. I think the potential 2 years, 3 years, whatever, to be a starter, if not just really good depth. I think he's really good. I'm glad the Birds got him. I'm glad they got him late. 5th round, perfectly fine with me. If you want to say they went too early on that, that's between you and your God. Outside linebackers, Bryce Huff. We got him early in free agency. Mixed feelings on that as well. I think there was a lot of sentiment that it was not great because we gave the Jets back Hassan Reddick, but that is not a one-for-one trade. So Bryce Huff was a UDFA who went early with the Jets, played his best year last year. The hope is in Fangio's scheme, though, with us, he doesn't need to be Hassan Reddick. So don't conflate the two. Don't put the two together in your mind. Camp reports so far, however, though, for Bryce Huff have not been great. Even Fangio called him out, said, buddy, you got to step it up. You're not doing everything I need you to do. But more recently, sounding better. Sounds like he's improving in the scheme. There's also Brandon Graham. Little weird to see him listed as a linebacker and not a defensive end. He's 36 years old. This is his farewell tour. He's already said it. This is his final year. He's still playing well, but I have no clue where he fits in here because he's been a defensive end for so long. Now he's going to be an outside linebacker in his final year. So rotational play, hype man, talk some smack. I don't know. Glad he's around. We'll see where he fits in. Josh Sweat. Haven't heard much about him this summer. It's really been quiet. Other than the fact that he could have walked. He could have easily left the Eagles. He could have gotten more money. He chose to stay, which says a lot about Josh. Good for him. He had a good year last year. And he might actually have the most upside for any IDB play here. He's probably already rostered, but if no one's looking at Josh Sweat, you should. It could be another really big year for him. Behind him, Nolan Smith Jr., former first-round pick. He was supposed to be the Reddick replacement, and he hasn't been. It's been a disappointing rookie season. He had 10 solo tackles, 8 assists, 1 sack, and he played in 17 games. I know he wasn't a starter, but that's not what you were hoping for. He bulked up this offseason. Brandon Graham said his confidence is high. Hooray. He needs to make that jump in year 2. Absolutely. It's just got to be there. Also, let's not forget that Brandon Graham looked like a bust for a year or 2 as well. Sometimes it just takes these guys a little time to get going. So he's going to get the opportunities this year. They're going to be there. So number 5 here on the list is Jalyx Hunt. 3rd round pick out of Houston Christian. This was the first and maybe almost as big a what for me during the draft as the Ainias Smith pick. Because that's 3rd round. That's too early for me to be Googling in a draft. And that's what I had to do. Who is Jalyx Hunt? And I think the autocorrect kept trying to change it on me. Like, no, it's Jalyx. Come on, trust me on this one. So it seemed like a reach. A lot of people said it seemed like a reach during, after. Athletically, absolutely, he's got it. He's an athletic freak with tons of upside, no doubt there. But now it seems maybe there's more. Maybe it's more than that. He had a really good camp. There's a good potential for the future here. He's probably a really good one to stash in IDP if you're deep enough as well. Don't know when I don't know how much to expect from him in his rookie year or when he's going to rotate in. But considering the other question marks, I mean, at the very least, Brandon Graham is going after this year. So he's one to keep an eye on. He's good for the birds. I really want to see what he can do this year. Get him on the field. Overall, I like the starters. I like that they have tiers of experience and young guys in the wings. I don't know that linebackers are a strong point for the Eagles yet, but I definitely don't feel like they're a weak point anymore. Cornerbacks, they're still a little unclear to me as to what they've designated here. I know the people involved, where they're going to be, has been surprising to me, and I've seen them listed in different ways. Obviously, Darius Slay, he's our starting corner. He's our number 1. Back to full strength. Good to see him back. Then it gets a little murky already at number 2 because, we drafted Quinyon Mitchell first overall in the draft, but it seems like the corner that's going to be opposite Slay is either going to be Isaiah Rodgers or Keely Ringo. And I've seen it listed different ways on different charts. And that probably only really matters for fantasy football. For the Eagles, I don't know how much it matters, and it may change multiple times this year. It may change game to game. It may change in a game. So we don't know who the starter there is, but if it's Ringo was a 4th round pick last year. I was not really that into him. I just saw him get beat too much in college. I thought he was a liability. By all reports, he seems to have improved. People seem to actually be in on Ringo, and so I must be as well. No, I think he's earned his role from what I've seen and heard. It's nice to see a 4th round pick that can earn a starting role like that. So if he's legitimately the guy, I'm fine with that. The other guy, Isaiah Rodgers, is interesting because he was suspended all of last year for gambling. He was with the Colts. He got caught gambling, and they said, go away. So Howie Roseman picked him up right away and just held him and just had to wait until the suspension was up, which finally happened. And so he's a speedy guy. Out of the 2, Rodgers is faster. Ringo might profile a little bit more as your typical corner. I was actually thinking Rodgers would be the nickel corner initially. But either way, they're both good. Instead, the nickel corner so far is actually listed as Quinyon Mitchell, 1st round pick out of Toledo. So it's a little surprising, but he is versatile. I like that they're not pushing him. I don't want to throw him onto the field and match him up with Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, whoever. Like, don't just throw him to the wolves like that. Guy came from freaking Toledo. They say he's confident. They say he's worth the 1st round pick, but it's okay. Slow roll him in the corner or in the nickel. Nickel's a very important spot to be in. I mean, lots of good corners play the nickel. I'm fine with him there. He's just not going to be there forever, and that's actually great because they also have their second-round pick, Cooper DeJean, who also is versatile, and we have no idea where he's going to play. Could be safety, could be nickel. I think he's more likely to me to stick at nickel long term, I think. But either way, he can play all over. Good for the Eagles to get both those guys, to see them double down on a position of need like that, to go in hard on youth, considering what they just had in Bradbury and Slay's getting old. And it's just they needed young guys. So it's nice to see that they made those moves. Eli Ricks is also still on the team too, I believe, UDFA from last year. I can't really tell you who to take specifically here for IDP. I personally, I'll tell you, I took Quinyon Mitchell in my deepest Dynasty League, and I will be interested to see whoever starts opposite Slay. Safeties, probably viewed as the weakest spot last year, and likely again this year too. They got C.J. Gardner-Johnson back, and I love that. I hate that he left. I hate the way he left the team. It seemed like bad blood, but he's back. He's all in. I think he's dyeing his hair green again. Maybe the carpet matches the drapes. I don't know. But good to see him back. He's a tone setter, and I think he's a tone setter the Eagles were sorely lacking last year. You need a guy like that who's going to be vocal, who's going to be hard-hitting. He does get injured from all the hard hitting, but he's absolutely a guy we need, especially when, like I said, safety seems to still be kind of a rough spot for us there. Reed Blankenship, the ghost, solid player, not the most athletic. He needs to play smart, not to get beat deep, not to be a liability. And most of the time he does. He's very good. Last year, I believe he was very good for IDP. Still very glad he's on the team. We need him. Avonte Maddox, former corner, former nickel corner mostly, has made a position change, which seemed a little bit like a gimmick maybe at the time when they said it, but I guess it worked. We need safeties. He's stuck around as a safety. There was debate. So we'll see what he can add. I don't think the issue with him at this point in his career or his age is talent. It's just durability. So I'm hoping this works out. And he was never going to get the nickelback anyway, from the two rooks. It's just gone. They also kept Tristan McCollum. And there's more off the active roster as well. Sidney Brown is currently on the PUP, so he could come back this year, so he could take a spot from maybe McCollum or someone. James Bradbury is currently on IR. Strange how it seemed like that happened at the last second, but that's where they stashed him. They say he could be out 6 to 8 weeks because of a leg injury. I will be surprised if he comes back unless we get injured at the safety position, to be honest. Special teams, kicker Jake Elliott. I mean, I think everybody has to love him by this point. His field goal conversion percentage was 10th last year. He tied for the second longest distance kick with 61-yarder last year. So he's a little dude with a big leg. Jake's our guy. There's no worries about Jake. Little worry about our punter, Braden Mann. He was an upgrade over the previous year's Aaron Sipos. Mann averaged 6 more yards per kick over Sipos in 2023 per NFL.com. That was about 8th overall, and that sounds good, but if you get a little deeper on the numbers, he was in the bottom of the league for punts downed inside the 20, and also for the longest punt. He was bottom of the league. So I still think punter could use an upgrade. I'm a big fan of specialists, kicker, punter, kick returner. There's a lot of teams out there who have good specialists, and they matter in all the little ways maybe you don't think about, even if temporarily. Think about Kadarius Toney, who's worth less than a bag of salt. For that 1 year, painfully, against the Eagles in the Super Bowl, that one kick return. I mean, my God. Speaking of kick returners, let's get to ours. So, currently listed, Britton Covey, still our number 5 wide receiver, is still listed as our kick returner, as is cornerback Isaiah Rodgers. So maybe he's getting double duty there because they're both super fast. Covey never really struck me as a big play guy, But once I got into the numbers from last year, apparently he was 6th last year in average return yards with 30. He also didn't fumble. He's a value specialist. Like I said, I like those. I'm interested to see how he does this year with the new kickoff. But that's our special team, and that's the Eagles. I'm not going to give a win-loss guess. I don't really see the value in it. What I will tell you is that PFF ranked the Eagles as the 9th easiest schedule this year. Fox Sports ranked it as the 12th easiest. They're obviously the easiest in their division. Everyone says so. Good. Their home games look good outside of the Packers in Brazil. I think that's going to be tough because I do think the Packers are good. And all that travel to Brazil, the likelihood that they're all going to be murdered just because they wear the green sometimes, tough. Away games, their toughest away games are probably going to be the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Cowboys. But whatever their win-loss total is, I still expect playoffs for them this year. It would be a great disappointment again. I think with the new coordinators, things are looking up compared to last year, so we'll see how it goes. But optimistic, still very optimistic for the Birds, optimistic all the way around, love the Eagles. So thank you so much for watching this very weird, long episode of Shut Up Football, this Eagles edition of Shut Up Football. Fly, Eagles, fly, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace!